Classic Game Center. Today is Asteroids for the Atari 2600. We are stuck in space and we have to blast our way through an asteroid field. So, Asteroids is one of those games that's fairly simple in concept. You're a lone spaceship in the middle of space attacking a whole bunch of asteroids. There's not really much of a plot. I guess the instruction book kind of refers to it as if you're exploring deep space and you wind up in an asteroid field and you have to just shoot all the asteroids in sight until you can either escape or somebody comes to rescue you, or in this case, like in any Atari game, or until you die. Now, one thing of note for Asteroids, at least for me, is that it's a pretty easy game on the default settings on the Atari. Normally, it's just you against the asteroids. I've been able to play for well over 40 minutes without getting a game over on the normal game settings. I actually had to set this to the difficulty A position on my Atari 2600, so it would be a little bit more challenging. You notice every once in a while there's either a little spaceship or a satellite that comes flying by that's trying to shoot me. That's because I have the difficulty set on A. On difficulty B, you don't get that. It's actually an easier game of Asteroids, so I like to challenge myself. And even then, this game really wasn't much of a challenge. There's another one right there. Now, the other thing that you can do, I haven't really displayed it yet because I haven't had to really get out of the way of anything yet, is you can use your thrusters to move around the screen. The ship movement, in my opinion, is pretty poor, because once you let go of the thrust, you still just keep flying in one direction. You have to kind of hit the thrust in the opposite direction and slow yourself down. The other thing that you can do is, if you pull back on the joystick, you can actually warp to another location on the screen. The only downside to that, it's good in theory, to get yourself out of a tight situation, but the only downside is that you may end up warping into the path of another asteroid. So it's not always a good idea to do it. Now, as you can see, you just keep shooting them and they just keep coming back, and that's a lot of what there is to asteroids. It's just these multicolor asteroids and you. Now, I have a small history with this game in that I played this when I was young, and I sucked at this game when I was a kid. And when I say I sucked, I mean I sucked. I could not get past usually the second wave is when I died, and that was on the easy setting. I don't know what happened, why I all of a sudden became this awesome Asteroids player, but now it's like I don't even have to move from the center of the screen. I just keep mashing the buttons and shooting every asteroid, and the lives just rack up. You get an extra life at about every 5,000 points on the default settings, and that's what I have it set at. So maybe if I try it at a different setting where you don't get extra lives at all, or you just get it at a greater interval, maybe then it'll be a little bit more challenging. But in this particular game, it was just way too easy. I actually had to purposely tank it in order to end it for this review. Otherwise, this review probably would have gone on and on and on. My take on Asteroids is, it's a fun arcadey style game. It's certainly not my favorite, but if you're just getting started with collecting Atari 2600 games, it's not a bad game to get. It's a good taste of what to expect with the Atari 2600. And since it's so common, you can actually find it pretty cheap these days. You could probably, buy a full lot of Atari games on eBay or something, for maybe about $20 or so. And usually people who are selling the lots have the more common games, and this is one of them. So you can find this game fairly easy. So if you like what you see, and if you like, easy games that are easy to get into, difficult to master sort of thing, just arcadey games, you can't go wrong with Asteroids. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I don't hate it either. It's just not one that I play all too often. So, as you can see, I'm just kind of spinning around, crashing into Asteroids at this point, just looking to just end it, so that way you guys don't need to listen to me babble on any longer. So, I hope that you enjoyed this review, and come back again.